Rohit, if I can turn to you now, you represent a different side of the steel sector, the reinforcement steel community, rebar
Correct,
industry.
that's right.
Is it the same story on the rebar side as it is on the structural steel side, or is it different? And if so, can you explain that a little bit?
I think you'll find that generally it's the entire steel industry that's going through a similar issue. As Asim said, we do have an issue here being utilized as a cheap form of financing in this market today. The way the business is being done has changed over the years. We have an oversupply similar to the structural steel and the rebar side. We have a large number of traders within the market which are also finding somehow ability to get cheap financing. Overall, I think you'll find that there is a flight from volume and quantity to quality. We're finding it a little challenging in terms of being able to get information flow between the various segments of the steel industry. You find that...
Can I just ask you a little bit about
Sure.
that point? So what information flow is required between the segments, and what segments are you referring to? Do you mean the coordination between different players in the rebar side, or do you mean
That's
between
correct.
structural steel and rebar?
I think primarily you'll find that the coordination between the rebar side. Over the years, there has been a large focus on quantity. When the market was on an upward cycle, it's great. You know, you sort of you don't have an issue with selling, but then you get used to that selling. You get used to those volumes. And when the market starts to contract, you need to also adjust to that. The problem is that once you're looking at the top line, and that's always been your focus, and not have to concern yourself about the bottom line because it was always there. Today you find yourself in a situation where top line is less important, and as Asim said, and I have to agree with him, the bottom line is extremely important. So as a business ourselves, we've sort of gone away from just looking at volumes. We don't necessarily target the big jobs anymore. We target the more profitable jobs. We look at very much
so
the
how
customer.
do you identify those? How can you know if...
Well, one of the most important things for us is knowing the payment cycle. If we're dealing with a customer and we know that they have had a good history with us, or we've seen it generally in the market through know how we've been in the industry for so many years, we generally get to hear what's happening in the market. We find that we are okay with giving them credit on the assumption that they'll be paying at regular intervals, not extending the payment cycle too much. That way we're able to protect our margins. I think our margins are very much eaten away by delayed and protracted payments. And that's one of the issues that we're seeing today, and something that's been happening over the past couple of years. This year a little bit more.
And presumably for the rebar sector, possibly also on the structural side, but if you're supplying metal to a contractor, they might be working for another contractor who's then working for another contractor
Sure.
and a client. So
Correct.
you don't have, whilst your immediate clients might have a good payment record, you don't necessarily have visibility all the way up the food chain. Is that a challenge?
I'm glad you've mentioned that. This is one of the things that we've become a little bit more cautious of. Our due diligence has obviously gotten much, much better over the years. We no longer take a project knowing the contractor only. We want to know who the client is for that contractor. And a lot of the times we try and assess from our side the business model. So what is the purpose of that building or structure coming up? If that building is for off-plan sales, for example, we tend to be a little bit cautious about that given the market today. If it's an infrastructure job, we know what to expect in terms of payment cycle, so we deal with it accordingly. Generally speaking, if you're dealing with a project which is for the nation here, the economy, and it's government backed, you're not concerned about not being paid. You're quite comfortable that you will be paid. Fine, payments can sometimes go up and down, but you know that you're safe with that specific contractor. Whereas in the private sector, sometimes it is a little bit more challenging. There are businesses that are a little bit more ill-conceived, plans, business plans that haven't been thought out completely. So we try to be a little bit careful on where we supply as well.